Welcome back to episode 323 of the Tallboy Radio Podcast. And as we always say, who knows where it goes when the beer flows? Well, the beer is flowing to Florida tonight. But before we say hello to our guest, I need to say hello to the man on the left. How are you doing, Gazza?
Yeah, I'm all good, Beans. Even in the world. I hope you're all well out there in listener land, and I'm really looking forward to this. In the green room earlier, we were sort of chatting about various things with our guest, and can't wait for some of his stories, and can't wait for where this episode takes us. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into it.
Indeed. So last time we had Sgt Maverick on, we didn't have his book, but guess what? He was kind enough to send us not one copy, not two copies, but 4 copies, and I should add, has autographed and written a personal message in each one of them. So what a generous gift that is. So Bert, we'll take this opportunity now to thank you in person. Thank you for sending these to us.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me on again. It was great doing it the last time with you, and since the book kind of kicked it all off with my appearance on podcasts as well as yours, I figured, let me send you a few of the books. This way you can read not my story, just my story, but our story as police officers in America. Because I always say when I talk about the book that I'm not telling my story, I'm telling our story, because I'm not unique. These things happen to all of us, and I hope you guys were able to get into it and enjoy the reading. Everything, is absolutely true, and truth is stranger than fiction most of the time. So that's the reality of law enforcement. I mean, basically anywhere in the world. But what I like to say in the Western civilized world, policing is very similar all over the place. Europe, America, parts of South America, not all parts, Canada, So anyway, I'm glad you guys got them, and I hope you're enjoying them.
Oh, definitely. And actually, as you said, it's a collective story that's told there. And that's the common theme that we found whenever we've had a guest on from American law enforcement. So we've only had one on from the UK, actually. And he came on to talk about other matters, funnily enough. Cool Mahai. Remember him?
No.
Tell my look in your face.
Put a puzzle look.
Yeah.
No.
But yeah, it's a collective story that is told that you experience these things together. We always talk about the camaraderie, and we'll get into that as well with some of the stories from your book. So, first of all, it's called The Greatest Show on Earth, or The Real Greatest Show on Earth, I should say. Tell us about that, because it's written in as though it was acts, plays, etc. It's written as though it was a show as opposed to a book. Tell us a bit about the ideology behind that.
We in law enforcement consider what we do out there on the street and in the homes of other people somewhat of a circus. So when I decided to write the book, I first said it has to be the unfiltered truth about policing in America. I don't read fiction novels. And there's only one that I ever read, Red Storm Rising by Tom Clancy, which I couldn't put down, which is basically what Russia's doing in Ukraine now, spreading their tentacles and trying to take over other territory. And that book was, what a great book. I mean, Tom Clancy with the stuff he wrote. But other than that, I do historical books. I read historical books. I'm into especially World War II. And I have, my favorites from history. So when I decided to write this book, it had to be the truth, unfiltered truth of policing in America. And since we consider it a circus, that's how I came up with the title. Ringling Brothers here, the greatest show on earth, the circus. So then I took it one step further and said, this is the real greatest show on earth, because this is, the truth. And all the good and the bad and the ugly of law enforcement. I praise us, I criticize us, I throw us under the bus when I need to, because we're not perfect, we make mistakes. But it had to be an inside look, so to speak, at what policing was really like. And in keeping with the circus theme, each chapter is called an act, like a theatrical act, and then each subchapter is a scene. you know, so just like a theatrical film. So I kept that theme throughout the book instead of just calling it a chapter. Everybody calls their books, you know, they call them chapters. So I wanted to continue with that. And then I sat for a long time and decided what topics I wanted to write about. What is it that people ask about? You know, they see on TV and movies. So I came up with a bunch of topics that I thought everyone would find interesting. And then what is the life of a police officer and how does it start? And how does one decide to become, you know, a police officer or a firefighter or, you know, go into the military? I think for the most part, especially my generation and before that, you really have to decide or understand that this is what you want to do. And you're not going to make a lot of money doing it. And you can get seriously hurt or killed doing it. But this is the type of individual that we're looking for, you know, and I was a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed 22-year-old when I entered the academy. And now I'm old and cynical and somewhat damaged because that happens to all of us. You know, it just, it wears on you. But the book talks about all those things, about what happens to us, how we look at things, how we looked at things in the beginning, how we look at things in the middle of the career, and then at the end at retirement and beyond. So that's the crux of the book. And I'm just the vehicle that takes you through the stories. I have my stories throughout the book, and then I really wanted to add legitimacy to what I was saying by adding the final chapter of stories from other cops.
Yeah.
Show the reader I'm not unique. This happens to all of us. And I was fortunate enough to get a bunch of stories that include my brother from his time in crime scene. He gave us 4 crime scene stories, you know, the real CSI Miami. Although he didn't drive a Hummer and he didn't wear a sports jacket. He wore a polo shirt and cargo pants, and it's very dirty, sweaty work at most of the time, especially here during the summer. And then my son, who's on the job, and he gave us 2 really great stories of things that happened to him. And my brother's daughter, who's a lieutenant with us currently, and she gave us some sad but feel-good stories of her time in community policing. And then, of course, all the rest of them, all the guys came up with their own stories of stuff that happened to them during their careers. So I wanted to give you, the reader, and everyone else, a really good picture of what it's like to be a police officer, you know, in America. And I think, you know, there's, what's the word I'm looking for? This is reality. You know, what I wrote about is reality. And some people, I actually had one person, civilian, related to my wife through her job, that told me, I read your book. It wasn't my cup of tea. And I didn't know how to take that. You know, like, well, okay, what do you mean? You know, I guess she found the stark reality of what I was writing.
Yeah.
And maybe in contrast to the person that she knows as my wife's husband, right?
Yeah.
And when I mentioned certain things in the book about me, you know, it kind of reveals a few things about me also. It's my memoirs, some personal stuff. All right, maybe it's a little off-putting. I don't know. But it is who I am, you know, and I don't apologize for that. But it is who we are, and I'm certainly not going to apologize for who we are.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And just want to take you back really to just prior to when you said you were a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 22-year-old going into the academy. What sort of drove you? What motivated you then to make that decision initially to then become that person that you now subsequently state doesn't earn that much money, potentially could get killed, and is probably a thankless job?
Well, I am an adrenaline junkie. Although I do not have any plans for jumping out of an airplane anytime soon.
Right.
And I don't bungee jump either. But other than that, I do like active sports, and you know, I ride a motorcycle. I mean, I don't ride a motorcycle crazy. I have a big touring bike, not a sport bike, but I do like the action. Uh, having played real football, right? Not American football,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And being part of a team, right? Because that was always important to me. I was always part of a team, except when I played tennis. Yeah, I was part of a team in high school, but you're playing by yourself, you know,
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
court, but still being part of a team. So after I moved to Miami, my family had already moved down here in '79, and I stayed up north in New York State to finish high school. I was a senior, and I started college up there where I played football for the college. A little college in Western Connecticut that wasn't good at anything, so we didn't do anything, right? We sucked, right? We're terrible. I think we won like 3 games that season. But then I decided to move to Miami, and the neighbor behind my parents' house was a Metro-Dade police sergeant. So I got to know him, and we kicked around the soccer ball in the yards between the house and got to know each other. And then I started thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And I said, you know, I think I want to be either a police officer or firefighter. So I applied in 1982 to both Metro Police and Metro Fire. So it was going to be one or the other. And these were the 2 departments to apply for. Down here, bar none, no other agency, because they had the great reputations. They're the largest agencies in the Southeast United States for both police and fire. And had great reputations. So, you know, it kind of wore on me. So in January of '83, I had my final interview with the fire department, and the division chief in charge of hiring did my final interview. And he said, "You're hired. Next fire college class, you're going to start." I said, "Okay, great. You know, become a Metro-Dade firefighter." And 2 weeks later, my background investigator for Metro Police called me and he said, "You're starting the academy February 8th. And I wanted to be a police officer more than I wanted to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
So I contacted fire, you know, right before I started the academy to make sure nothing happened, and declined the offer. And then I started the academy in February of '83. And, you know, an eye opener. It's basically boot camp for cops.
Yeah.
Without as much of the hardcore, you know, physical training that, you know, you get in the military, but still it was enough. And have you ever done a push-up? Well, how about 1,000, you know, in the first couple of days? Um, you know, just like any boot camp, fire, police, military, they're going to beat you down,
Yeah.
you know, they're going to run you into the ground. And that's just the way it is, to break you down and build you back up. So,
Yeah.
you know, and it was, you know, very team building for sure. You're part of a team now. There are no individuals in an academy class, just like there are no individuals out on the street. You got to work as a team. So always having that team mentality, it wasn't hard to get used to, and I enjoyed it. And the academy, you know, was an eye opener that you got to go through all these things. Not only physical training, but the academic study to learn the laws and procedures and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually graduate and get out on the street and apply all those things, which you have no clue how to apply when you graduate the academy and get on the road. You know, your field training officer becomes your mama and your daddy and is going to show you the ropes, you know. So and that's basically how it went, you know. And then you get on the road, you know, your first day on the road, and
Yeah.
you know, you're like that. But it was a great experience.
It's one I can only imagine, you know what I mean? And what you know, I mentioned earlier, the fact that it's a shared experience. The camaraderie is such a big part of it, isn't it? You know what I mean? You know, you become reliant on your partner. You know, the other cops that we've had on literally talk about it more as a relationship of brothers, of like interdependency, you know, closer than they are to their own brothers in
Yeah.
many ways.
Yeah.
one of the acts in the book is police and relationships. I don't know if you've gotten that far,
Not quite.
but we historically have a high divorce rate. So I talk about those things, and how difficult it can be. Not just only because of the stress of the job and the spouse, worrying about getting hurt or worse, but our attitudes, our mentality, the things we see, the things we cannot control. We talk, we come home angry and all those things. But in that one chapter, I call it marriage, divorce, marriage again and again, because in my particular case, it's 3 times. And like they say, a third time's a charm. So Rosie and I have now been together, over 22 years. And, best relationship I've ever had. And we came to each other older in life, so we were more experienced. But, when you're young, let's say relationships are wasted on the young, 100%. You don't know what you're doing. And now couple that with all the things that we get involved in and see, and a little side, you're a young, hopefully decent looking guy and fit in uniform. It tends to draw, women, tends to draw attention, which can be a problem. But then what I do in that chapter is I segue into partners, the other marriage is what you're alluding to, because your partner, and especially if you're fortunate enough to have a long-term partner, and I'm talking at least 6 months or a year, you're in the car together every day. That person you rely on to watch your back, and also they're there to listen to you, your happy moments, your sad moments, whatever you're going through at home, because they're truly the only one that can understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
Right. The things that we see and have to deal with. And one partner I have, and today is the 4th. So on the 6th is the anniversary of his death back in 2000. Having him in the car with me, and when we first met at one of the stations we worked at, he transferred into the station. We didn't know each other yet. And the first call when we met was a call of a little boy that drowned. It was an apartment complex, walk out the sliding glass door in the back, right into the lake behind the apartment complex, and he went in. Took fire rescue like 45 minutes to find him. I was a lifeguard. I'm an expert swimmer. Trust me when I tell you that I wanted to jump and take my gear off and jump in the water and go look for him.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to do that. If fire rescue divers are there, then we're just putting ourselves in jeopardy. Although I've swam those lakes when I first moved to Miami. I used to snorkel in those lakes. Alligators, snakes, friends and I snorkeled the lakes. But afterwards, Mal and I were at the station and we were on the call together, and that's when we first met, and he was crying in front of me. I'm talking about a 6'4" man who was a lot older than me and been a cop for a long time. Here he is crying in front of a perfect stranger. Turns out later on when we were partners, he and I saved a 3-year-old that drowned. It was happy irony.
Yeah. Yeah.
But only he could understand what I felt that day, and only I could understand what he felt that day. Both the tragedy, the loss of the little boy, and then the one we saved.
Yeah.
And then all the other stuff in between. Your partner understands, and you can bounce things off of them. Even if it's male, female partners, you still talk in the car. You're spending all that time together. You get to know each other. And you'll say things to your partner you won't say to your spouse.
Yeah.
Because there's some things you just can't say to your spouse. The child abuse cases that we see, the industrial accidents or a bad crash where, somebody was killed in a crash and it was, just terrible to look at. How do you explain that? How do you talk about that? You know, so basically at home you're bottled up, but at work you can let those things out. You know,
And
you
how does
eventually-
that affect home then? Because we've had a couple of obviously sort of cops on and stuff now, and I always struggle with how do you separate that work from home? Because you know, in a way, I'm thankful that I haven't experienced all the things that you will have done, and all of our other sort of guests that have been on the front line as such. And but the things you've seen, the things you've witnessed, the things that you hear, you know, how do you stop that from affecting you at night and at home with wives and husbands and sons, daughters, etc., etc.? How does that even work? Because I struggle with that.
early on you don't, because when you're new to the job and you start seeing what the truth of life is, the reality of life, and the things that happen out there that most people have no idea
Yeah,
is taking place, because unless it happens to them, unless there's an incident that happens to them or a crime or a tragedy, they have no clue. They have no clue about how bad people are,
yeah,
you know, real hardcore criminals. So you're getting this daily now. You're not only enthusiastic, let me tell you, many times I didn't want to go home and work. And my first shift was 2 p.m. to 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And I loved afternoon shift the rest of my life. It was my favorite shift. The transition from day into night, and then at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, you don't want to go home because you're having so much fun and you can't believe you're getting paid for this. Back then in the 80s, we weren't getting paid shit. Okay. But you know, it was our job. We chose this. But those things that you see, this is the best way I've ever heard it put. I had a senior officer when I was a fairly new sergeant, and he was a very senior guy that I had on my squad. And he said, you know, when you go through your career, you're carrying a backpack. And this is life. This is for everybody. And every day you put a little something more in that backpack. And then the next day, a little something more. And the next day, a little something more. Before you know it, it is so heavy that you can barely move.
yeah,
And that's the psychological backpack that affects cops, fire, ER doctors and nurses, you know, military that are in combat operations. You can't keep it from affecting you. You have to learn how to handle it. And early on, we don't know how. And early on, many police departments to this day don't have a psychological services bureau
yeah,
with staff psychologists to help them with this. We did, but it was very rudimentary back then, where you can go and talk to somebody. And then, of course, you have the stigma. You're not going to go get help because we don't go get help,
yeah,
right? We can't show weakness. And that was one of the stigmas, you know, historically. So arguments will ensue. You know, you come home, you're talking about different things, and those other things, like I use an example. Why do I want to hear about a broken dishwasher? I just saw somebody get killed in a crash. I had to chase this bad guy for 20 minutes and he bailed out. I had to run him down. I got in a fight with him. I ruined my uniform, had to take him to jail, get rejected from the jail, go to the hospital with him because he had injuries, and then take him back to jail. What the hell do I care about a washing machine? You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and that's the problem, is that you don't know how to handle it when you're young. You've got to develop that skill. And that takes a long time. It really does. You know, to use a word, you know, and we're kind of fucked up in the head,
yeah,
you know, for a while, and maybe some guys long term.
yeah,
And it is difficult. You got to navigate those waters, and you know, a lot of marriages don't survive that because I didn't know how to do it, right? And then the thing is that your wife's arguing with you about this or that or the other, or there's not enough money. The same thing that happens to everybody else. It's just compounded by all the crap that we see.
yeah, yeah,
So, we're scarred. I'm scarred. I'm cynical. No question about it. But I like to think that I'm well adjusted now. I'm 6 years into retirement, and my life is very good, very happy with my wife and the kids and grandkids. But it wasn't always the case.
yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? For us, on the outside. We listen to your stories, and like you say, you know, only you and your partner know exactly what you're going through. We can listen to it, we can empathize, and we can sympathize maybe. But the one thing that we can't do, and human beings traditionally are terrible at doing, I've always said this, is putting themselves in somebody else's shoes, because you can't see what you see through your eyes. We can't live those experiences. But by you sharing them in your book, it does give us that little bit of an understanding. You know, it gives us a little, you know, peek into your world, that you know, the things that you dealt with. One of the chapters in your book then is called, it's Act 8, 330s and 33, is it 3 1s or 31s? I'm not sure. And it's about murder, death, and etc. like that. So talk us through that chapter then. You know, let's lift the spirits. We're looking at that chapter to kick off with.
So yeah, murder, death, kill, which is a term that I took from Sylvester Stallone's Demolition Man, from '94, I think it was, where he and Wesley Snipes were the protagonist and antagonist. And in 2036, I think it was, the San Angeles Police Department, you know, called those things murder, death, kills, right? But it's such a great term because it covers all death investigations.
Yeah.
Murder, death, kill, you know. If you're going to be a cop in a major metropolitan area or semi major metropolitan area, but especially the bigger areas, death rides along with you almost every day. Can't get away from it because the numbers are there. The higher the population, more crap happens. And what people do to each other, that's one thing that you just sometimes, it's still amazing, you know, all this time later, how cruel we are to each other. And, you know, murder, the number one crime, the most important crime. Robbing somebody and then killing them for sport.
Yeah.
Not just robbing them, right? But then they give you whatever you're, you know, the bad guy's demanding, and then they shoot them anyway. Or the bad guy on bad guy crime, which is prevalent, especially, you know, back in the mid 80s, even now, but back then, you know, drug dealer on drug dealer. And
Yeah.
the time that I came on was the time of the cocaine cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
And my district, Southwest District for Metro-Dade Police, was the busiest district in terms of call volume because it was the most populated area of the county. But we also had many of the drug dealers that lived in our district. And when back then, when you see a big house that pops up where it shouldn't be compared to the other houses, and then you have houses with cameras on them, gee, I wonder who lives there. Only drug dealers had cameras on their houses back then. So, you know, we knew where all the bad guys were, the drug dealers, but they were killing each other at rates that we had never seen. So much so that my department, Metro-Dade, and then the City of Miami Police Department had to develop specialized homicide squads just to handle the drug-related deaths. And it was every day. When I tell you, we were finding bodies every day, it wasn't an exaggeration. These guys were killing each other all the time because, you know, are you Miami Vice fans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are, because you like doing those memes with you and me and the pastel.
Yes, that's it.
By the way, that last one you sent, everybody, my family, everybody got a big kick out of it. It was great. But that was our time, you know, of Miami Vice. And the bad guys were just killing each other so often where it got to the point we would get a call, we'd have another body, you know, you respond as a uniform officer, you secure the scene, you call your sergeant, the sergeant comes, now we got to put up the ubiquitous crime scene tape, and then we got to call homicide and crime scene, you know, it's a big deal all the time. And it got to the point where it was so often that basically a death investigation, if it didn't involve children or women or girls, because you don't get over that, but asshole bad guy on asshole bad guy. You know what it is? It's a report and a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. Okay, it's my turn. I got it. I got to start the report. You guys finish setting up the scene. Homicide will be here in an hour, and and next investigation, next investigation, next investigation. We got a new shift. We got another body. That was also the time where remote starts started with vehicles, because the bad guys would blow each other up in the cars. So they put remote starts, start the car before they got near it, see if it would blow up. And there's one particular story. When I was in plain clothes back then, my partner and I were following up on convicted drug dealers to try to get them to flip on other guys. Because you get the little fish, and then you got to go after the bigger fish, and then you got the bigger fish, and you go after the bigger fish still. So my partner and I knocked on this guy, this house that we had as his last known address, and his wife answered the phone. We identified ourselves while we were there, and she said, "Do you remember?" And it was like maybe 6 months earlier. "Do you remember the car bombing at the Circle K convenience store on Southwest 97th Avenue?" And we said, "Yes, of course, we were there." That was my husband. Oops.
Wow.
And now you don't know where to stick your face, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was on that scene. I remember it. I can see it now in my mind's eye, what I saw in that scene. He was in the driver's seat when he pulled up to the Circle K convenience store. The guys remotely went and blew him up in the driver's seat.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was, other than the gunshot, that's a horrendous way to go, but it was also not uncommon to blow each other up in cars. So the movies get it right, whenever you see this now, the 40 something years hence of you seeing cars blowing up. It's still used today, but back then, that's when it kind of started. Other than terrorist related activities going back to the 60s and 70s. But the drug dealers just killing each other all the time. And for us, it just got to be another report, and let homicide do their investigation. And many times they didn't close these cases because, the drug dealers, they kill each other, or they flee back to Colombia or Bolivia or wherever, or even Cuba. And the Colombians and the Cubans were the two warring factions, the main warring factions back then that were doing all the stuff, like in the movie Scarface.
Yeah.
So it was just everywhere. It was just all the time, for a period of quite a few years. And because of it, we had to grow. Our department had to grow. City of Miami had to grow because we couldn't keep up with it. And the flow of money, and then people moving here from other places. And then, of course, the Mario boat lift in 1980. And that changed Miami for sure. I have several colleagues that were Marielitos, as we call them. They came over on the Mario boat lift and then became citizens and became police officers. It's not an uncommon story.
Yeah.
Other than the drug dealers and the mentally ill and, all that came with that. So.
It's incredible, isn't it, that time? Because we watch it from afar, where we live in a very sleepy town in Cheshire. We watched Miami Vice, and it was fiction. Well, it was fictional, there was no Tubbs and Crockett, or whatever.
Yeah, Crockett and Tubbs, yeah.
That was it. But you know what I mean? Just to know that these things had some basis in fact is mind-blowing, isn't it, guys?
Yeah. And I was going to say, you got Don Johnson and then the other guy that nobody can ever remember his name.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we were big fans of that. And you thought, no, that can't be happening. Surely, that's not going to be the case. And you haven't got this. But, when the likes yourself and other sort of guests come on, they talk about it. You're like, shit, you guys were there, like front line, like seeing it, feeling it, living it, like every day. And as you say there was body counts every day. And we were like, no, it can't be like that. Yeah, you might get something every now and then. No, you're telling us it was like that every day. And surely you got to a point where you're like, this can't carry on. and it just did every day.
Eventually, everything tapers off, right? That's the natural cycle of things. And the actor you're speaking of is Philip Michael Thomas.
That's the guy. That's the guy. Yes. Apologies, Philip, if you're listening, by the way.
Which we know he is.
Which we know he is. Yeah, I think.
I got to meet him a couple of times.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
So in the TV show, you see Metro-Dade police officers in the background as the uniform. Those are all real cops. My brother was on there in the first season. Yeah. I have a very close friend that was on there playing a SWAT guy, which we call SRT, Special Response Team. But many of my colleagues were on the show as the extras, right? So one night I was in plain clothes. We were following this burglar all over the place, trying to catch him doing his thing. He didn't do anything that night. He went to bed. So then one of the guys comes on the radio for my squad, and he goes, "Hey, come over here." And I think it was Southwest 96th Street off of 57th Avenue. Miami Vice is filming here. So we all haul ass over there, right? And I remember the episode because I love the show. I know all the episodes. I have the soundtrack on my phone. Great music. And they were filming this one episode, and then the crew invited us in. They knew we were the cops, right? We're all in plain clothes. We got our badges hanging around our necks. We got guns on our hips. And they go, "Come on in." They fed us. And then they said, "Okay, make sure your radios are off. We're going to be filming a scene." And they let us be in there while they were filming the scene.
Wow.
And we got to meet Philip Michael Thomas. And he talked to us for a long time. Super nice guy. Don Johnson was a bit of a prick.
That doesn't surprise
I was going to say, yeah, you don't tell me something that I probably don't already know.
Yeah, that's his reputation. I mean, he was great as Sonny Crockett, no question.
Yeah.
But Philip Michael Thomas was the really nice guy. And then later on, a few years down the road after the show went off the air, went out to dinner with my mother and the family to a Red Lobster. And Philip Michael Thomas was there with his girlfriend, and then ended up seating them next to us.
Wow.
So I walked up to him and I go, "Hi, my name is Bert Gonzalez. I'm an officer with Metro-Dade Police. You and I met on this scene, this episode you were filming," and he remembered.
No way.
Yes. And then we chit-chatted a little bit. And then my wife, my mother told him, "You've aged a lot better than your partner did." My mother had no filter.
Brilliant.
But I think he's still around. He's living off of residuals, obviously, because it was such a popular show and it's still getting played.
Yeah.
But what a great show, cutting edge television for the time. But what you alluded to, there's truth in fiction. And a lot of that stuff is real. While we weren't driving Ferraris and, wearing the suits and all that kind of stuff, the drug activity was real. It really was. I mean, it was coming in like you couldn't believe.
Because you sort of feel like, how much stuff could come in. Sure, it's not enough just to keep, I say, a department or a team going, 5 days a week or 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year sort of thing. But you're saying it did. And it was literally, it was just coming in quicker than you could know what to do with, I suppose. And I suppose in a way that was the distribution route as well. So would it come in and then it would then get distributed potentially all up the East Coast and into Midland, and that was that was the focus of where it arrived into the US.
Yeah, I mean, because of Miami's proximity to Central and South America, most of it came in here, as opposed to in recent times across the Mexican border.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, it was coming in all the time. We couldn't keep up with it. The feds couldn't keep up with it. Miami couldn't keep up with it. I do have, one incident where we were plainclothes working surveillances of people getting robbed in their driveways. They would be followed home from the higher end stores and then hit when they parked their car in their driveway. So we were working that in December of '85. And my partner and I were driving down the street, and we saw two guys looking in at a front door, and one of them was looking in the window next to the door. It was kind of dark, but it looked unusual. I went down and made a U-turn, came back, they were gone. Okay, something's wrong here. Parked a couple houses down. I told the homeowner who we were, don't call the police. We are the police. You know, we're going to watch this house. Called in the rest of the team. No activity. Decided to go knock on the door. A couple of guys went to the front door. My partner and I went around back. They were questioning a woman that answered the door, a young woman, late 20s, 30. And Joe asked her about the two guys that were at the front door. And she goes, there weren't any men here. So one of the guys relays it to us in the back, and we're looking at the two guys that we saw sitting in what's called the Florida room. It's a enclosed patio room that's here in Florida, with two children on the couch. And I tell them on the radio, no, we're looking at the two guys. They're here. Okay. Something's really wrong here. Joe talks his way into the house, sits the woman down. We secure the two guys because we know they're bad guys. He gets the woman to sign a consent to search. Instead of us getting a warrant, she signs a consent to search. She's Colombian. Another red flag, right? So we search the house, and we go into the room, one of the rooms, and we find suitcases with coffee grounds in them. That was used to throw off the dogs.
Yeah.
Back then, right? They'd smell the coffee grounds and not the cocaine or the marijuana. Since that time, dogs have been trained to hit on coffee grounds, right? Everybody builds a better mousetrap, right?
Yeah.
In addition to that, we found, you familiar with the oxygen and acetylene tanks that look like a torpedo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? We found a couple of those in the room. And then we found a table with a ledger book with codes in it. And then the coup de grace was a garbage bag full of cash that, when we counted it later on, was $1.3 million.
Wow. Jeez.
It's all right. We're not done with the search. We go up in the attic and we find 208 kilos of cocaine, which at the time was the largest haul in our, county history. That has been eclipsed by tonnage since then, but at the time, this was the big thing. So
Yeah.
we called in our main narcotics unit. They sent the ledger book to the DEA. The DEA broke the code, and it was between a real estate office in Miami, Colombia, and Milan, Italy. So that was the triangle. And they had inserted a Colombian family with 3 children to live in this house as the clearinghouse to run the drugs through in this really ritzy neighborhood. Until, we got lucky. Let's call it what it is. It wasn't great detective work. We're doing our surveillance. We happen, something's out of place. It just seemed that way. And you start peeling back the layers of the onion, and boom, we got the biggest haul in Dade County history.
Wow.
With all the cash. And that's just the way it happens. It's not, brilliant flat foot, pounding the pavement. Most of the time it's just luck, something like that. But it was great. It was a great case, and what did we do? Did we put a dent in it? Maybe for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how big the issue was then, was it?
Yeah.
That amount was just, small fry to them, to the size.
It was the Dutch boy finger in the dike, like this. And that's the way it was.
So one of the other sections of your book that I want to pick up, because I haven't actually got to this bit yet, and it's a bit that does fascinate me. We've had a couple of police officers on and talked about this kind of thing in the past, but active shooters. Okay, you talk there about guns. Obviously, we're fascinated by it. Is a crude way of putting it, because obviously the gun laws over here are very different to they are in the US. We've done an episode on that actually, where we looked at the difference between the two. But active shooting, we've had a lady on actually who was in Vegas when she, when they were shooting from the Mandalay Bay there, and one of the things that she said there about her training was they trained and trained and trained for active shooter situations. One of the situations they never trained for was somebody 30 stories up. You know what I mean? They were never trained to deal with that. And obviously nowadays they do look at that kind of stuff. What was that like then, dealing with that situation? When you're going in, you know, you said at the start, you know, you're a brash, you're excitable, you were an adrenaline junkie. But going into that situation where there is an active shooter, what is that like?
So fortunately, I never had to face that. So if any officer tells you, well, I would have done this and I would have done, they're full of shit, okay? Because they don't know what they would have done.
Yeah.
When you're under fire like that, the stress is so great, you really don't know what you'll do, how you react. So you got to rely on your training. So active shooter really jumped off in the US in 1999 in Columbine, Colorado.
Yeah.
Where these two kids, the trench coat mafia, you know, dressed up, and they went in and they shot up, you know, all the students and a couple of teachers. The response model at the time was uniform patrol responds like they do to everything. And then they perimeterize and secure and wait for specialized units like the SWAT team. That was the training.
Yeah.
What we have learned through that incident and multiple incidents since then is that you can't wait for the SWAT team to go. It takes too long because they're not on patrol. They're usually training, or if it's late at night or something, they may not be on duty and they got to get called out. So we had to change the response model. And during this time, I became an active shooter instructor. So I think I have some expertise to talk about this. The idea that changed from Columbine to modern response is that uniform patrol has to go in immediately.
Yeah.
So the model that was developed, that we adopted and that has been adopted around the country, is the contact team. So the first 2, 3, or 4 officers that arrive on the scene become a contact team. So you need to form up immediately. And what we used was a diamond formation. So we had 360 coverage as we're going through the school or the mall or the theater, like happened in Aurora, Colorado. The idea is to enter immediately and go to the sound of the gunfire. The sounds of the shots are telling you that people are actively being killed.
Yeah.
You have to terminate the threat. What does terminate mean to you?
Kill.
Yes, exactly. So let's not sugarcoat it. You're there to kill the bad guy or bad guys, to stop the killing. That's the whole idea. So you have to arrive, you form up your contact team, however many guys you have right at the beginning, and you enter. Go towards the sound of the gunfire and engage the subject if you can. Easier said than done. Because now, if you are in that situation and you are hearing gunfire, your pucker factor is at about 110%. You're scared because no one is not scared. You know, let's not, mince words here. Everybody's scared. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It's overcoming fear. And you have to go in. You're with your team. Now, you may have trained an active shooter with these guys or maybe not, but you still have to go. And the idea is to terminate the threat. That's the present model in most places around the country. Unfortunately, this will continue to happen. And I want to make this clear. This is not a gun issue. This is a mental illness issue.
Yeah.
Because you're a crazy son of a bitch when you decide you're going to go take out a bunch of people that are innocent. You're not in combat. You're pissed off at the world. Your wife left you. She screwed your neighbor or whatever. You lost money in the stock market. Everybody has. And we've had those situations. This is mental illness. Everybody has access to guns. And the bad guy's going to, this idea that, if we take away guns, well, then only the bad guys are going to have guns because they're going to get it illegally off the street. And we've got about 330 million people in the country. Well, we probably have more guns than that in this country. You know, we have the Second Amendment. And a lot of, you know, there's people that don't understand that or know exactly what it means. My take on it, while I am not a gun enthusiast per se, I don't hunt. My brother's a hunter. He's been hunting since he was a teenager. He went into the Army, came out of the Army, became a cop. He's retired a long time now, and he loves hunting. He's Africa, Canada, all over the U.S. Not me. I don't care for that. I don't even, you know, go out and shoot targets. It doesn't appeal to me. But I do know this. If you take away all the citizens' guns, all you have left are slaves. And we can't allow the government to be able to overrun us like that. And that's the crux of the Second Amendment. All right. So having said that, without going too far down the rabbit hole of politics, these people, no matter where they get the firearm, it's mental illness that causes them to do this. How do you regulate mental illness? I was also a crisis intervention team instructor, training officers to deal with people with mental illness for a long time. You cannot regulate mental illness. You just can't do it. Many people have mental illness and they function just fine in society. It's the guy or the gal or the trans person now, as we've come to see, that something went terribly wrong and they've crossed that threshold and now they want to take it out on innocent people. That is the cause of active shooter. Somebody that's completely lost touch with reality. The response is completely different, and the response model I gave you is the way police are going to respond. Is every officer going to respond that way? Absolutely not. When I was an instructor with the group that I was with, we were doing this year in and year out. We would put the sergeants and officers through their paces in the scenarios that we developed. And part of the scenarios also is IEDs, improvised explosive devices.
Yeah.
The two kids in Columbine took barbecue propane tanks and rigged them as IEDs for the police because they know the police are going to respond. Hopefully they blow them up and they take out a couple of cops. So you have to navigate that also. How do you navigate that? You find an IED, you keep going. You keep going towards the sound of the gunfire. The IED is secondary. Nobody's dying because of that right now. The gunfire is still ongoing. So we used our training center as one of the venues that's like a school with all the classrooms in our training center. So we would send the squads with their sergeant through as contact teams to end up in a classroom where the bad guy was holed up with a group of students. Now you have to make entry into that classroom. Shots are being fired, you have to make entry. And then we teach them how to enter, like a SWAT team, the way they take the room. You know, one first guy through the door goes to the blind side, the second guy right on them, and they come in and they take the room. And if you see a bad guy with a gun, you got to put him down. One particular evening we were training and this sergeant told me, and I worked with him and we were in the same station. He said, I'm not going in there. I'm going to get shot. I said, and I won't mention his name. Yeah, you may very well get shot. But you know that badge that you're wearing? That badge says that you have to do something. Okay? That's what we're here for. Special response team is 45 minutes away. People are dying right now. You need to make entry with your team. No, I'm not going to go in there. I may get shot. I said, okay. So if it was your son's school and he had a son, and I'm the one responding, would you want me to go in there? Would you expect me to go in there and save your son and the other children? He didn't know what to say to me. I said, so you expect the cops at your son's school to go in, but you're not going to go in if you have to respond to a school for an active shooter. Okay. I mean, I already knew this guy and I didn't care to work with him already. And that was the nail in the coffin for me. So I just kept my distance. If I had to work with him on the street, we had to handle something, his squad, my squad, or whatever, fine. But I didn't socialize with him.
Yeah.
He didn't have my work ethic.
Sorry, I was just going to ask that. Wait, when you mentioned that you did the training and the training changed effectively to become the equivalent of like a first response team because you can't wait an hour for SWAT or 45 minutes for SWAT or whatever. So I think the answer is probably yes. Did you get quite a lot of pushback from officers that said, well, actually, I don't think I want to do that anymore? And was there any pushback, or were quite a lot of officers, you know what, yeah, we'll embrace it. It needs to happen. We'll just do it.
Most stayed quiet.
Okay.
They wouldn't verbalize that they wouldn't go in.
Right.
Some did, like this guy. Now, I do know this. Now, the training right at the end of my career started changing even more because of Parkland here in Broward County, just north of us, right? Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, where, let's not mention his name, but on Valentine's Day now, 4 years ago, was it? He went in and did what he did. The problem was that the Broward Sheriff's deputy that responded, that got there first, he stood outside Building 12 and advised, but he didn't say, have units meet me here so we can make entry. He waited outside. And then a captain showed up from Broward Sheriff and set up a perimeter instead of sending in deputies to form the contact teams. On something like this, the perimeter is the last thing you're going to set up. Bad move. They received the same training that we were doing. This is the response model for the country. Did they do it as often as we did? I don't think so. Did everybody in Broward Sheriff's Office get the training? I don't think so. Because it's a large department also, and it takes a long time to put people through, this nightly training. But they really screwed the pooch on that response, and Deputy Peterson got a lot of criticism because 17 people died, and maybe if they made entry, they could have saved some of them. We don't know. That's an unknown number, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't say, send me units to Building 12 so we can make entry. Had he said that and units went with him and they made entry, we wouldn't have had the controversy that we did.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that the captain setting up a perimeter was a bad move. She's the ranking officer or deputy on scene. She should have known better. And I'm guessing that probably she didn't go through active shooter training, right? She was a captain. We do lieutenants, sergeants, and officers. That's the crux of the training. Captains are usually in the station administratively, handling stuff like that. But because of that incident, then my department started changing that where they expected one officer to make entry by himself. And I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Because think about this. You arrive on the scene of an active shooter, shots being fired. Number one, you don't know how many guys there are, right?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. You don't know what kind of weapons they have. Short weapons like handguns, shotguns, or long rifles that have an effective range of 500 yards, right? So a long hallway in a school, an AR-15 or an AK-47 has an effective range all the way in the entire distance of that school. So you're going to go in, unknown number of subjects, unknown weapons, in an unfamiliar place and try to take out a bad guy, chances are with only a handgun. Yeah, we all have rifles now, but still, we're not trained soldiers. There's guys that love firearms and they shoot all the time. And there's the highly trained guys, SWAT teams, SRT teams, or other tactical units to get more training than the uniform officer. I do know this. If the department, any agency expects you to go in by yourself, there's going to be many officers or deputies, depending on the agency, that are going to say, you know what, I'm going to take the long way around. And if I'm not there, I can't get in trouble.
Yeah.
Because the number one instinct for a human being is self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that kind of fear, there's people that cannot override that fear.
Yeah.
They're just so mortified. They're shaking in their boots. They are not going to be able to face that. Can you blame them? No, I can't blame them because that's human instinct. The training is designed to push you past that. Soldiers, SWAT teams, many cops, the military, the elite special forces, they go in harm's way all the time. They got to push back, under fire. And under fire in the military, you go towards the gunfire, right? You've got to overcome that. You've got to take the fight to them. You just can't hunker down, and maybe call in an airstrike. I mean, that's done, obviously, but
Yeah.
you got to get in the fight. There's officers that just can't do that. And I don't care what agency it is, anywhere in the world, some are just not going to be able to engage.
Yeah.
And there lies another problem. So are we scared? Yes, absolutely. One time in the Intracoastal District in the northeast part of the county, when I was assigned there, I had a specialized squad. We were quasi-uniform and we were quasi-detective. We went and found the bad guys for the detectives. So we didn't wear the regular uniform. We wore tactical gear, heavy vests, rifle plates, and polo shirts and cargo pants. And, we had our Kevlar helmets, rifles as well. And I happened to be in front of North Miami Beach Senior High School when a call went out of a possible student with a gun. Right there. I'm right in front of the school. And I was meeting my guys to have a little meeting about what we were going to do next. I advised the dispatcher, I'm here. My guys will be here in a minute. They got there within like 30 seconds. We didn't hesitate. We made entry into the school per our training. Diamond formation. We went in, guns, looking for the bad guy, and the shots fired. Fortunately, it was a bogus call.
Yeah.
But believe me, you're making entry through those steel front doors of the school. You're going, what is on the other side of that door? I don't know.
Yeah.
Were we scared? Sure, of course, absolutely. But it's our job, and we push through. And like I said at the beginning of the active shooter discussion, fortunately, I never had to encounter that. But other guys have. Other guys around the country, and they responded, and they went towards the gunfire, and they took out the bad guy, and some got shot. Those are all heroes. But they were scared too. But they overcame their fear because they have a job to do. And, not everybody can engage. It's just the reality. And that's what I wrote about it in the chapter on active shooter, that people need to understand this. You just can't sit watching the news and complain, or the cops didn't do this or didn't do that. It's not that simple. And I covered the FBI profiling of these people because that takes place after every single active shooter incident, right? The FBI comes in and the profilers go to work and they tear apart the person's life and they see this. Look, when that call goes out, I don't give a shit about who this guy is, what his life was like. His mother didn't love him enough. His puppy died. We don't care. We're dealing with what you are doing right now.
Yeah.
The FBI is going to come in after the fact. They're not first responders. Let's make that clear. The FBI and federal agencies are not true first responders.
Yeah.
They are law enforcement. And when they have to go get a bad guy, they go in harm's way, no question. But the only true first responder in any country, especially the US or Canada or England or Germany or Italy or France, is the uniformed patrol officer.
Yeah.
They're the first on the scene. And that's where the training needs to go. And nobody cares about this guy, hated life and the girls didn't go with him to the prom. We don't care about that. You're an active shooter or you're a bad guy, whatever, and you're robbing something. We don't care. We're going after you. All that is nonsense as far as we're concerned. You'll have time to break it all down, but that is the reality of active shooter. People don't really want to talk about that.
Yeah. And it must be difficult because you train to enter and you train to go into a building and sweep the building and everything else. But I suppose until you're actually face to face with the active shooter, I don't suppose you know whether you can actually pull the trigger or not, I suppose, because effectively it's shoot or be shot, I suppose, at that point. You know, either you're going to shoot them or you're going to be shot. And I suppose that must, for some people, that, I mean, I can't imagine even myself being in that position at all. But, you know, having that choice or that decision, and it is a fraction of a second, am I capable of pulling a trigger and shooting another person? But I suppose the context then is, but if I don't do that, I then will be shot myself, if that makes sense.
It's kill or be killed.
Yeah, yeah.
So a bad guy is pointing a weapon at you. There's, you know, very little room for negotiation here.
Yeah.
A guy with a knife. Okay. You may have a little distance between you and the guy with the knife, but I've been through knife training. I've done martial arts, and I also understand that the guy can close the gap between you two, close the distance awfully fast, and you may freeze up because you're not sure of what's happening to you, and now he's got a knife in your chest. So you've got to decide what the threat level is, and rely on your training and instinct. One of the officers I had, they arrested this guy the week before, dropped him off at the jail, and he said to them, I should have killed you when I had the chance. A week later, here he is on a bus bench. The officer spots him, calls in the other guys, and the guy gets up and he reaches behind his collar and pulls out 2 butcher knives and comes at the officer.
Wow.
Danny was trying to create distance, right? What you're trained to do. Ordered him, drop the knives, and then it got to the point where he was closing the distance, closing the gap, and Danny opened fire. He fired 5 rounds, and then finally, the last round hit the guy in the head and put him down. I arrived on the scene. Now, Danny became my officer the next week. I was taking over this particular specialized squad he was on. His sergeant was on the scene and walking around in a daze. He was an older gentleman and he was completely lost. Danny didn't know what to do. He was shaking, scared out of his mind. That was my scene as the senior supervisor on the scene. So I was the incident commander, as we call it. There was no lieutenant working that day. So I had to take over the whole scene with a fellow sergeant, and we handled the whole thing. I took Danny and put him in a car. And I posted an officer with him. And I said, nobody speaks to Danny because he has a right not to speak to anybody. We called psychological services and they sent a psychologist, right? This is protocol for a shooting. Danny was a young officer, like 2 years on the job. Completely scared out of his mind as to what happened. Homicide came out, of course, the state attorney, shooting team. They cleared the case immediately, right on the scene. There wasn't, there's no doubt about what happened. Off in the distance, we had some witnesses across the canal, about 100 yards away, that told homicide the subject had his hands up in the air and the officer shot him. Well, from behind it 100 yards away, you can't see the knives in the hands. Yes, he had his hands up in the air.
Yeah.
You couldn't see he had butcher knives, right? And they were this long. All true. But he was going to kill Danny.
Yeah.
Danny was so terrified of that incident, that it gave him nightmares for a long time. But then he realized it was kill or be killed. His training, his self-preservation instinct kicked in. He put the guy down. The guy had mental illness. His brother was a Broward County deputy, who responded to the scene, and I had to talk to him and tell him, we killed your cousin, because, you know, I'd explained to him, and he said, yes, he has mental illness, and okay, you know, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but it was kill or be killed for Danny. Danny did his job. He didn't want to do his job, but he did his job.
I mean,
Can't imagine being in that situation.
no,
No.
I can't imagine being in that situation. That's it's horrific. Yeah, it's horrific. And it's a thing that, like you say, you know, he was in a daze for that length of time, but you know, he might have rationalized it, but he still has to live with the fact that he's been put in a situation where he had to take somebody's life.
100%. And, you know, he's okay today, but I'm sure every once in a while he has nightmares about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just a, you know, normal human being, you're going to have nightmares about that, even though he understands that he had to. Now, conversely, I worked with a sergeant who used to be on a special response team, and then he had a specialized squad at Miami International Airport, the tactical guy, big time, right? He was involved in quite a few shootings on the special response team, putting down bad guys when they were hitting the structure, the house, whatever it was. And at the airport, we had a guy that tried to stab one of his officers. And this sergeant did what he had to do and put him down. Okay. I saw him the next day in the kitchen at the station, and I go, hey, how you doing? He goes, another day at the office. Just like that.
Yeah. How did you
Right.
rationalize that? Yeah.
Because he was used to it. Right. He had killed people before. So everybody's a little different. You know, how you're going to take that, how you're going to, you know, process it. How's it going to affect you? I can tell you that he's very well adjusted and enjoying his retirement, but he understood, and as also as a former soldier, this is part of the job.
Yeah.
Different life.
Hard. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Different life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, you know, we normally wrap these things up around about the hour mark. We've shot over a little bit. I think we did last time you were on, funnily enough, but we have no problem with that. We thank you for the extra time that you've given us. But yeah, it's been a really enjoyable, well, a little bit over.
A little bit over an hour, yeah, hour and 10, yeah.
Yeah. So before we let you go, we need to let you share any links to your podcast and share with the good folks where they can pick up your book.
So my podcast is Sgt Maverick, the podcast, all things police work, politics, and life. I love presidential politics, so, you know, at times we're going to get into that. I'll be restarting the podcast. We had to take a break. My wife had surgery, and my son, who's my engineer, he's a sergeant on the job, but he was stuck on midnights. And you can imagine what kind of shift that is, you know, for him to come in the morning and do a, you know, a podcast at my house and then try to get some sleep and go to work. So we're going to be starting up again, probably in May. So it's on YouTube. You can also get the links to my episodes that I've done on sgtmaverick.com. That's sgtmaverick.com. And you can see the episodes that I've done already. I'm just getting started. I'm not, you know, pros like you guys have been at this for a long time. I mean, maybe one day I'll get there, but, and also you can see all the opinion editorials that I've done, mostly law enforcement based, for thinkAmerican.news. All the links are there as well. And the book, Amazon, like everything else, you can get it there. And yeah, there it is. Thank you. If you really, for the would-be reader, you want to know the unfiltered truth about policing, this book is it. Now, every author says something like that. I get it. All right. But this is not a Mickey Spillane detective novel, who done it or whatever. This is what we do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Any cop, anywhere in the civilized world, what they run into. And that's why I think it's more interesting than a fictional novel. You know, and my wife loves fictional novels, and she's a would-be detective because of all the novels that she read. But you know, this is the unfiltered truth. So, you know, if someone picks it up, enjoy it. This is who we are. You know, this is just who we are.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, you know, we're very fortunate that we didn't have to pay for a copy. So
absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate
No,
that.
no. My pleasure, my honor, and I appreciate you guys having me on now for a second time. It was great, and let's do this again sometime.
Amen.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, we've barely touched the surface actually of the notes that I've made over here. We were maybe a quarter of those that I made, and we need to do a third episode at some point this year. Don't you worry about that.
You let me know. As a matter of fact, Rosie and I are going to be in your neck of the woods, so to speak. April 18th, we're flying to Scotland.
Well, wow, nice.
Wow.
Okay, very nice.
Whereabouts?
As Beans, as you and I have spoken before, this is going to be the first time I'm driving on the wrong side of the road.
It's the right side.
It's the right side of the road.
So my plan is I always take a portable GPS when we rent a car someplace. The GPS will be in the middle of the car, of course, but I'll be on the right side of the car now.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape an index card to the right side of the GPS. It says drive on left until I get used to it. So we're gonna be driving all over Scotland. We're going to the old course for a tour.
Incredible.
We have the oldest tennis court in the world up in Scotland, which I'm a tennis player. We're going to go to the Highlands. We're going to go to Inverness. We're going to go to the North Coast, Isle of Skye. We're doing it all.
Fantastic.
We're going to start in Edinburgh.
Oh, wow.
Edinburgh's a wonderful place. Yeah. Been there loads of times. We've podcasted from there. We've visited there on a number of occasions, and it's an incredible city. You walk up to the castle, and it is sort of magical, and you've got to go and see the castle up there. It is incredible.
Yeah, Rosie's got quite a few castles on the itinerary, starting out with the Edinburgh Castle. Any suggestions? Any food suggestions?
Well, haggis, obviously, which is a Scottish sort of delicacy. I quite like haggis. I know lots of people don't like it, but I quite like haggis. You've got to try it at least.
There is one better food to be had in Scotland, though.
Whiskey?
Well, no. Whiskey,
Okay.
yes, that's an absolute given. Deep fried Mars bar. If you can get that, the deep fried Mars bar.
What's that word?
A deep fried Mars bar.
So like a Snickers bar. So like a
Mars bar.
Well, they dip it, and they basically deep fry it.
Yeah, put it in batter and
they put it in batter.
Okay. I am gonna try haggis.
Yes, you've got to try haggis. I really like it.
Yeah, I don't mind it.
It's very nice.
And we're taking a tour of the Glenlivet Distillery.
Oh, very nice.
Yes.
So we're also trying to learn. We're watching Outlander, and we've watched a bunch of videos on traveling in Scotland. So a dram, right?
Yeah, a wee dram.
Shot.
Yeah,
it's a dram. And here's. Are you familiar with the Cheers term for Gaelic Scottish Sanjiva or Sanjiva?
Slanjiva, yeah.
Slanjiva.
How do you say it?
Go on.
Well, I would say Slanjiva.
Yeah.
Okay. So now when we have family gatherings and stuff and we're going to toast or whatever, I always say the way we've heard it a couple of different ways, Sanjiva or Slanjiva.
Yeah.
Or Sanjiva, it's like two syllables.
Yeah, so Slanjiva.
Okay. All right. Got it. But
Inverness is incredible. Loch Ness, obviously, sort of Inverness, so there's a Loch Ness visitor centre, and Loch Ness, you will know this, is a loch that has the most fresh water in it. It's got more fresh water in it than the whole of England and Wales combined. And when you think about the Lake District and everything else in Wales, it's the depth of Loch Ness, which is incredible. But yeah, Inverness is an amazing place. Loch Ness, Scotland is incredible. The scenery is stunning. You'll have an absolute whale of a time, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. We're going to be gone 3.5 weeks.
Wow, yeah, incredible.
Yeah, we don't come back till May 12th. April 18th.
You were working on dates then, weren't you?
I was just doing the math because I'm up in Edinburgh myself, but it's at the end of May time, so we just miss you.
Yeah.
My cousin's coming over from San Antonio in Texas and a couple of his buddies, and we're starting in London and we're heading north, and we're going to finish up in Edinburgh because Edinburgh is one of my favorite places. And I've took him to Edinburgh the last time he came over, actually, and he wanted to go back. and he enjoyed haggis. He loved haggis. He said it was a bit, I forget what he likened it to, but it was a southern dish from Louisiana in terms of its texture. And the one thing he did really enjoy was the deep fried Mars bar. But honestly, it sounds terrible. It sounds like it shouldn't be good.
It sounds like it shouldn't work.
Is he equating it to gumbo?
No, not gumbo. I forget what it was called. It sounds a bit like poutine, but it's not poutine because I know what poutine is. That's a Canadian dish. Yeah, I forget the word. I'll text him afterwards. I'll let you know. Find out what he said it was similar to. But yeah, we had haggis in a couple of places. And one of the places that we had it in, again, because they love to deep fry things in Scotland, we had it deep fried in batter in a pub. And then we had a few whiskeys afterwards, and gee whiz. I mean, it might have been the whiskeys that made us think it was any good, but I thought it was phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, no, haggis is a definite, and there is. I don't know whether you're doing it. There is a drive. Is it the Scotland? Is it like the 500 or whatever they're called?
Yes.
And it's basically it's a coastal drive that goes all the way around the Highlands and stuff. Which is, I haven't done it. By all accounts, it's phenomenal, and again, the changes in scenery that you see as you're going around the coast is incredible. So you will honestly you'll have a fantastic time.
We're doing it exactly that drive.
Brilliant.
I'm really looking forward to it and going through the Highlands.
Yeah,
all the scenery just looks spectacular.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. We'll be dressed for cold and rain. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, absolutely. Even in the height of summer, you need to be dressed for cold and rain up in Scotland, unfortunately. But
enough, yeah, when my cousin was over, so like I say, he lives in San Antonio in Texas, so he's not too used to cold weather, and it's the first scarf he's ever had to buy.
I'd like to invite you guys, if you ever come to South Florida, please. If you're going to take a trip down here, but I suggest you do it in the winter.
Okay. Too hot in the summer.
It's too hot and humid, especially if you're not used to it. Like your cousin in San Antonio. Texas summer is brutal too. So we were out there last year, 24 in October. And we had 90s in Dallas, and then we made our way down to San Antonio. And it wasn't, typical November weather. It was too hot, but we're used to it here. We just have more humidity here. Yeah. So anyway, you guys come to Miami, we'll have a great time. We'll get together, we'll throw a few back, and tell some stories. And what I close out every podcast with, like I closed out the book, my favorite television sergeant from Hill Street Blues, Phil Esterhaus, that every day in the episode when he did the roll call, he told everybody, let's be careful out there.
Yeah.
So you guys, let's be careful, and thank you again. It's been fantastic. Love doing this with you guys. And I'd love to do it again sometime.
No, I appreciate your time. And I say, we'll hook up some dates and we'll do it again sometime. But genuinely appreciate your time this evening. An hour and 24 minutes. We could have gone on for 2 hours, 24 minutes. So yeah, let's look forward to the next time, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Cheers. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Friends around the mic, kicking back. All right. Day turns into night. Podcast in the spotlight. Sipping on that brew.